Sup my dudes, Valkyrja, and today I want to talk about my Vault team and why I run Frigg inside of Vault. I get asked this a ton, like a lot. People ask me about Frigg inside of Vault, why I do it, etc. And I want to basically explain it today. Valk, why don't you run Meryl over Frigg? Well, the thing is, with Frigg specifically, with her ice domain, she does a couple things with it. With this ice domain, she gets infinite dashes to be able to go ahead and do really good AoE damage, where whenever you use Samir's discharge, for example, this likes to knock a lot of enemies away. So a lot of times you want to follow up the discharge with a skill to go ahead and clump them back up if you have the A5, that is. You can bring them all back together, but Frigg is able to hit basically everything in front of you without restrictions, essentially, in a giant, massive AoE, thanks to Ice Domain and Multi-Slash, or Judgment Cut, whatever you want to call it. Basically, because Frigg plus Samir, they kind of mitigate each other's weaknesses. And Frigg, one thing Frigg does kind of lack is single target DPS, at least in my experience, to where her single target kind of falls off in comparison to some other units. But Samir well, I have my Samir at 8.6, but I would say at about A1 becomes a single target DPS monster because of the little explosions she does every time she crits. And as long as you're critting, you are just going to wreck everything. So I ran ahead and I ran head to head. I compared directly Meryl with Frigg inside the Volt team, exactly how each one compares to each other. I would say, barring the couple errors I make inside the video on the Frigg side, I feel like I had a pretty good run with Meryl. I didn't do the whole charge attack because it's not realistic to think about because Samir's going to eat up all your stamina. But against Frigg, I had a couple missteps in Frigg that cost me about 4 to 5 seconds, so it doesn't really matter for the grand scheme of things, but it's just something to remember. So with the Meryl run, I was able to do it in about 10 seconds flat, and I generated about a quarter of discharge. I generated about a quarter of it, and then we go to the Frigg run, where it took me around, I would say about double that, but like I said, there were some errors. I got hit, I made some mistakes where I double dashed or canceled my multi-slash a little too early, and that ended up costing me a little bit inside those runs. So I would say somewhere around like 15 seconds. So basically, she takes a little bit longer to shatter the shield, but she's able to generate almost an entire bar more, almost an entire bar of discharge more than Meryl did. So I'm gaining a lot of discharge, which is going to allow me to kind of spam Samir's discharge, which is a really strong one and deals a lot of damage. It genuinely hits really hard, hits pretty often, and just absolutely allows you to wreck a lot of damage single target, and it's one of the reasons I run inside of Vault. Now, whenever I do run this in Vault, I end up doing a ton of damage. I end up being probably, inside Void Rift, for example, I end up being some of the most DPS out of anybody. I'll do 12, 14 million pretty handedly with very little buffs. And I've been able to climb all the way up to Bygone Phantasm floor 190. I'm just now starting to struggle as far as DPS goes. It's mostly just trying to group things because, like I said, Samir has a lot of grouping issues, even with A5. Ends up having a lot of grouping issues, and Frigg kind of helps alleviate that, and also helps you build a lot of DPS in your downtime, because while Samir does do a lot of damage with their normal attacks, you really just want to do helicopter on top of a group of enemies and get lots of multi-hits going off. That way you can trigger the A1 constantly and deal lots of damage that way. Anyways, that is why I run Frigg inside of Vault, and that's why I believe, at least right now, as far as DPS goes, Vault is the best team in the game. I don't know too much about PvP-wise, so maybe Frost PvP-wise is absolutely meta right now. I don't know. I don't really play PvP. I don't mess with it. I might get into it eventually, but as for right now, I feel like Vault is probably the best. Vault with Frigg is probably the best DPS team in the game, and I have a lot of reasons as to why. Anyways, thank you guys for watching as always. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. We didn't even have Wish. It didn't even have Wish, dude.